Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0. Welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic. And let's begin. Part 3. Ino shot up, surprised that the sun was already sitting high in the sky and that the spot beside her was empty. She glanced at the clock on her bedside. It was already noon. She has slept an awful long time. Ino sighed and got out of bed, then made her way to the bathroom. She pulled off her pajamas and jumped into the shower, allowing the droplets to fall down on her skin. She rubbed shampoo into her short blonde hair, then scrubbed her body. After she showered, she pulled on a purple summer dress and brushed her hair. As she moved the brush through her short locks, she noticed a small black pattern on her underarm. She frowned and stepped closer to the mirror and investigated the black mark. It looked like a swirl, very much like the red one Konoha shinobi wore on their vests. It was tiny, which explained why she hadn't seen it before, but what was it? Surely it wasn't a tattoo. Ino knew that she would never get a tattoo, and if she ever did, she would not get it under her arm. Ino decided she would ask Naruto as soon as he came home. Ino made herself some toast and headed for Naruto's study, where she knew a bookcase stood with books that probably belonged to her older self. She was hoping that she would find something on the mind transfer technique, or anything about her family history that could give her answers about her new theory. Was it really possible that the technique that caused Ino to appear in her alternate self was a mind transfer technique? And if it was, where was her other self? But of all things she wanted answers to, she wanted to know why she no longer had the urge to stick her finger down her throat. It was almost like her bulimia disappeared into thin air. And she knew that was impossible. Bulimia wasn't cured overnight. It was, after all in the mind. Ino pulled out several books and moved to Naruto's desk. She sat down and opened the first one, a thick book with yellowing pages from age. It was filled with diagrams, some she recognized from her training, others she had never seen before. Her older self had scribbled notes all over the pages. Ino had to admit she was impressed. Her other self was very intelligent. Ino studied the book for hours. She was so drawn into the notes her other self had written down that she hadn't even heard the front door open and close. "What are you doing?" A voice made her jump. Ino looked up, but calmed down when she realized it was Naruto. He was dressed in his standard Junin attire, his robe long taken off and placed on the coat rack. "I'm investigating something," Ino admitted. Naruto raised an eyebrow and approached her. He leaned over her to have a look at the book, and Ino couldn't help but feel intimidated by him leaning over her. She berated herself. She slept next to him. Surely she should be able to handle standing this close to him. "Ah, the alternate dimension theory." Naruto grinned. "You were quite curious about that. Locked yourself up in here all the time." "I did?" Ino asked, knowing Naruto was speaking of her other self. He nodded and moved away from her. "Minato will be staying the night with Masashi," Naruto pointed out. "Karen will bring him home tomorrow, then you will go shopping." "I will?" Ino asked, surprised. "Karen says you need to get out and explore." Naruto shrugged. "Hinata's going too." "Great." Ino smiled, suddenly excited. "You want a fact for the day?" Naruto asked, wiggling his eyebrows. Ino laughed. "I do actually." Ino grinned, as she crossed her legs. "Who's Hatake-kana's mother?" Naruto was surprised by her question, but then he chuckled. "Shizune." "No way." "Really?" Ino asked, shocked. "Yes, really." Naruto grinned. "We saw it coming, it was quite obvious." Enko wasn't very happy, though. Ino laughed. She was well aware of the chemistry that moved around Kakashi and Shizune when they were in the same room together. It was the same in her world too. And she understood the part about Enko too. The wild woman was madly in love with Kakashi, but maybe she was a bit too wild for him. "Can I ask another question?" Ino asked. "Sure." Naruto shrugged. It wasn't like there were any ground rules about the arrangement they made. What do you think will happen when I go back? Ino asked in a whisper. Naruto's eyes widened. He had never thought about the consequences that the strange transfer was to bring. Sure, he knew the future or past could change, perhaps, but he still wasn't sure about the nature of the events either, so what really waited for them on the other side of the bridge? I don't know, Naruto replied, I really don't know. I have another problem, Ino whispered again, this time much softer than before. What is it? Naruto asked. Notice the worry on his wife's face. How he wished he could step up and pull her close to him. How do I put this? I'm bulimic, Ino confessed, ashamed. Oh, Naruto's voice was crestfallen, do you want me to contact a doctor? No, Ino replied, too quickly to her liking, I'm supposed to be bulimic. Ever since the transfer I have not felt the compulsion to overeat or vomit on purpose. In fact, the thought of sticking my finger down my throat is almost disgusting. Naruto sighed in relief. So, what's the problem then? Bulimia doesn't heal overnight, Ino shrieked. Naruto stepped back, surprised at her outburst. He sighed and stepped closer to her, reached out and pulled her against him. He knew he was possibly overstepping a boundary, but he could feel she needed comfort. I'm sure nothing is wrong, Naruto whispered soothingly into her ear. What if the transfer did something to me? What if I'm a completely different person now? What if your wife, your real wife is suffering now? What if she's dead? Naruto's grip tightened, causing Ino to swallow her words. Naruto closed his eyes and inhaled his wife's sweet scent. He knew the woman in his arms was only his wife in body, not in spirit, but they felt so similar, so alike, it was frightening. He cared about her, and he did not like the fact that she was so afraid. I'm sure everything is fine, Naruto soothed her. I'm sure that your other self is out there somewhere, safe and working on a way to find her way back too. I'm sorry, Ino sobbed. Naruto pulled away just enough to see Ino's face. A lonesome tear ran down her cheek and he wiped it away. Don't cry, Naruto grinned, big girls don't cry. I'm just very emotional right now. I know. With 37-year-old Ino. Ino tossed and turned in the early hours of the morning, but the pain in her head would not subside. She sighed and stood up, a sudden wave of nausea hitting her. Surprised, Ino moved to the bathroom, in hopes that she didn't actually have to lean over the toilet bowl and puke her guts out. Luck wasn't on her side. Ino groaned and washed her mouth, then she stumbled downstairs. It was barely 6 o'clock, so everyone was still asleep. She poured herself a gl of water and sipped on it slowly. She sat down in the living room and pulled a blanket over her, the early morning freshness being a bit too chilly for her liking. When she finished her water, she lay down again and closed her eyes. Sleep did not come back. After an hour, Ino stood up again and went to the toilet. After she flushed the toilet, she stripped and climbed into the shower. As she rubbed soap on her arms, she realized her were surprisingly sensitive when she brushed against them. Confused, Ino looked down. They were swollen. She blinked, then it hit her. But it couldn't be, could it? Alarmed, Ino jumped out of the shower and rushed to her room where she hurriedly got dressed. After she made sure she looked presentable, she dashed out of the house, apple in hand, and ran towards where the Nara family lived. When she knocked on the door, she prayed it was the right house. When the door opened, she knew she was at the right place. No one could look so disheveled in the morning. Shikamaru was not a morning person. Shikamaru yawned. Ino, what are you doing here? I'm going to ask you a very strange question, Ino said quickly, causing her friend to frown. Do you know if I am a virgin? Shikamaru would have choked had he been drinking at that very moment. He stared at his teammate, suddenly very alarmed. He was convinced it was a joke, but her expression was so serious. As far as I know you are, Shikamaru muttered. Are you positive? Ino asked. Yes, Shikamaru stated, "You have been with a few boys, but none of them were serious enough for." Okay. Ino sighed, "Who was my last conquest again?" Shikamaru was giving her an odd look. Ino knew she was probably giving a lot away, but she had to discover the truth and soon. If she was pregnant, she had to be sure which Ino the mother was, and then figure out how on earth pregnancy was drawn into this complicated situation. Was it even possible for her to carry her pregnancy with her from another body? Clearly there might be a lot more dangers to 5 dimensions to heaven than she bargained for. Ino, Shikamaru sighed, "I doubt you are pregnant." Ino's eyes widened. She should have known he would deduce that was why she was questioning him. He was far too smart for his own good. "I don't know, Shikamaru," Ino trailed off. What was she supposed to say? "How about I take you to the hospital?" Shikamaru offered. Ino nodded slowly. Yes, that was a good idea. Shikamaru sighed, "So much for sleeping in. Wait in the living room while I get dressed." Sakura returned with a series of documents tucked under arm, he face drawn into a frown. Ino knew that look. Sakura was confused. Sakura put the papers down on the desk and sat down opposite Ino. "Well," Sakura started, but trailed off, as if trying to gather her thoughts. "Your umption was correct, you are pregnant." Ino sat in silence. Oh hell. Now what was going to happen? Sakura seemed just as shocked and lost. "I guess congratulations are in order." Ino smiled weakly. Sakura took the documents and flipped through them until she found a green-colored one. She scanned over it, then looked up into Ino's eyes. "Something is bothering me, Ino," Sakura admitted. "What is it?" Ino asked. "I had a look at your chakra system," Sakura explained, "and it is disrupted. Almost like you are under a genjutsu. I've sensed this oddity around you for a while now." Ino bit her lip. Her chakra was disrupted. What did that mean? Is that a problem? Yes, Sakura nodded, it means that it could be harmful to the baby. Your chakra flow is not normal and therefore almost none is traveling to your uterus. I'm worried that the lack of chakra to east with the development of the fetus could cause problems. Ino paled. This was not good. What do you suggest we do? Sakura sighed. I don't know. I've never encountered something like this before. I'll talk to the Hokage, but she might have to do research. But we will find a solution, I promise. Ino nodded. Meanwhile, Sakura changed the subject. I would like for you to take this information package and read it. It tells you everything about the 40 or so weeks of pregnancy and labor. Sakura handed a booklet over, which Ino took, knowing she didn't actually need it. She's had 2 children before and she was a trained medic. Nevertheless, she knew Sakura was giving it to her for ease of mind. I'll need to take vitamins too, Ino stated. Sakura nodded. You're taking this awfully well, Sakura pointed out. Ino smiled weakly and nodded. Being told she was pregnant was not a foreign concept. The only thing that worried her was the fact that this wasn't her actual body. And to make things worse, she knew nothing of what the transfer could do to the unborn child. What if she miscarried, or if the baby was born with a deformity? She would love it to bits, no matter how malformed the baby might be, but it still worried her. And what on earth would happen if she swapped back with her other self and left the poor unsuspecting 16-year-old pregnant? When Ino returned home, she headed straight for the pantry and pulled out as much food as she could. Then she collapsed on the couch and devoured everything her eyes could set on. Afterwards, she sat back and sighed. She still could not understand why she was having the bulimic tendencies of her other self. Clearly it was a malfunction, a negative side effect of the transfer, but Ino had always believed she had a strong will. Surely a petty disorder such as bulimia could not overpower her. Ino stood up and headed for the bathroom where she relieved herself. When she flushed the toilet, she scolded herself for wasting such good food. She really needed to see a doctor about the bulimia. The sooner she got over this, the better. She had another to feed now. With that going through her mind, she suddenly froze in realization. Could it be that the baby was actually hers? That she was pregnant with the child she had conceived with Naruto before the transfer? It seemed feasible. She did end up with the other Ino's bulimia, perhaps the baby traveled with her. The thought made Ino nauseous. She knew the dangers of 5 dimensions to heaven. She knew that it was dangerous, that it could harm, that's why it had been labeled forbidden. Horror pitted in Ino's stomach. What if the transfer killed the baby? No, Sakura would have noticed that. So the baby lives, but was it really out of danger? And if she were to reverse the technique, would the baby be safe in her real body? Ino collapsed on the ground and buried her head in her hands. What was she going to do? Everything had just gotten very complicated. Meanwhile, with 16-year-old Ino, Karen knocked on the door the next morning just after 10. Ino opened the door and allowed the redhead inside, followed by Minato, who was smiling widely. "Hello, Mama," Minato exclaimed as he threw himself into Ino's arms. She smiled and hugged her son tightly. He was so small, so worn and fragile. She loved him to bits. Karen watched with a smile on her face. Minato gave his mother a kiss, then ran upstairs to his room. "He's a real Uzumaki, that boy," Karen chuckled, full of energy. Ino smiled. "So, shopping?" "Yep." Karen nodded as she made her way to the kitchen and sat down at the dining table. Ino watched amazed at how comfortable Karen made herself. "How are you?" "I'm fine, thank you," Ino answered. "Good." Karen nodded. "Your chakra is still disrupted, but at least you haven't fainted yet." "Tea," Ino offered. Karen nodded, not bothered by the fact that Ino had changed the subject. Just as the kettle started boiling, another knock came from the front door. Ino knew it was Hinata, so she opened the door without hesitation and invited her best friend inside. The two moved to the kitchen. Hinata sat down, while Ino prepared the tea. "How is your life, Hinata?" Karen asked, no embarrassment present in her tone. Hinata blushed bright red, while Ino bit her lip. Now this was awkward. Ino joined the two ladies at the table with 3 cups of tea. All right, Hinata finally answered. "All right, is that it? Geez, is Gaara not satisfying you or something?" Karen asked. Hinata's blush deepened. No, I didn't say that," Hinata muttered. Karen laughed. "I'm pulling your leg." Karen chuckled as she took a sip of tea. "Oh, I'm pregnant again, by the way." Ino and Hinata's eyes widened in surprise. "Congratulations," they said together. Karen thanked them, then muttered something about an overly fertile Sasuke under her breath. Hinata giggled. "I think you're the more fertile one," Hinata stated, a devious glint in her eyes. Ino watched in amazement. She's never seen Hinata look like that. Karen raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Karen asked, surprised. "Well, Uzumaki clan members are known for having very strong sources of life. Don't you think that would include making babies too?" Hinata asked, wiggling her eyebrows. Ino burst out laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Hinata was being devious. She wished she had a camera. Karen blushed. Just because I'm from the Uzumaki clan doesn't mean I can make lots of babies. Where did you get that absurd idea from?" Ino stopped laughing and stared at Karen, surprised. "You're an Uzumaki?" Ino asked, flabbergasted. Karen corrected, "but yes, I am from the Uzumaki clan." Ino could not believe it. Right here before her sat a possible relative of Naruto. Well, they were probably only distantly related, but they were related nonetheless. The thought made Ino smile. Naruto had somebody else in the world, someone who shared his name. She was an Uchiha now. After they finished their tea, the 3 women headed out to the shops. They popped in at a few accessory stores, but did not buy anything. After that, they decided to spend some time at a clothing store. The store Karen and Hinata led Ino to was small and cozy, with colorful garments hanging from metal racks. The scent of vanilla hung in the air. Karen spotted a purple dress and was already in the fitting rooms to try it on. Hinata was browsing through a small collection of maternity wear, while Ino looked through the sundresses. She finally found a baby blue one with white flower prints. She ran her fingers over the soft fabric, mesmerized by the dress's simplicity. How could something so simple be so beautiful? A sudden force snapped through her. Ino stumbled backwards, her stomach churning. She dropped the dress, the hanger clanging on the wooden floor, which alarmed Hinata. Ino grabbed the first rack she could find and leaned forward. She felt like she was going to vomit and her palms were sweaty. Another strong force shot through her, this time painful. The pain settled in her back. Ino closed her eyes and tried to take a deep breath, but it felt like her throat was tight. And then she saw it. A flash. It was quick, so quick she barely saw it, but it was there. An image. She saw it. She saw herself, well, her older self, holding a small bundle in pink in her arms. Ino at first thought it was a dream, but when another image, clearer this time, flashed through her mind, she knew it was real. She saw the baby's eyes. It was Kagaya. Hinata placed her hand on Ino's shoulder. Are you alright, Ino? Yes, Ino breathed, tears flowing down her cheeks. I just saw something. A memory. You did? Hinata asked, alarmed. What did you see? Ino turned around, the tears still flowing, to look into her best friend's eyes. I saw my daughter's first time in my arms. Karen and Hinata decided to take Ino home. It wasn't as if anything drastic happened. All the young blonde saw was a memory, but Karen was worried it might cause her chakra to fluctuate. Hinata returned to Hyuga Manor, but Karen stayed by Ino's side. Her chakra remained disrupted, but nothing else happened. Ino seemed to be fine. More than fine, actually. The blonde was a bundle of smiling goo. She dropped her teacup, twice. Karen could do nothing but laugh, but deep down the redhead wondered if this was okay. If any of this was okay. Ino took another sip of her tea with a smile. She remembered her daughter's birth. It was so warm, the memory, it was like a butterfly fluttering in her stomach, in a good way. And although Ino felt so complete by seeing something so small, she knew it wouldn't last. After all, it wasn't her memory to keep. That night, when Ino climbed into bed next to Naruto, she fell asleep with a smile and dreamed of giving birth to her dear baby girl. There was no pain, no agony, just happiness. Contentment. The feeling of being filled with blissful emotion. For the first time, Ino felt complete in her new world. Naruto woke up alone the next morning. With a stifled yawn, he kicked his legs over the edge of the bed and stretched. Still half asleep, Naruto slouched his way to the study, where he found Ino's nose buried in old photo albums. What are you doing? Naruto asked, surprised she even found the things. 37-year-old Ino locked all the albums away in a cupboard, so that they wouldn't get damaged. Ino looked up, her warm smile from the previous day still on her lips. The smile reached her eyes. Naruto could not help but see his real wife in that smile. How he missed her. Looking at our wedding photos, Ino stated, and at the baby photos. Minato was so chubby. He's still chubby, Naruto shrugged. Ino giggled and turned her attention back to the photo album. Naruto's stomach growled, causing Ino to give him an odd look. He blushed and turned to leave the room, might as well make breakfast. Naruto. Ino called out to him. Naruto stopped and looked at his wife over his shoulder. Yeah, he asked. Ino was giving him a very strange look and it was worrying him. Was something wrong? If we don't find a solution, Ino started, causing Naruto to frown, but he kept quiet to let her continue. If we don't find a way to swap me back, is it alright if I stay? Can I be Uzumaki Ino? Can I be Kagaya and Minato's mother? Naruto did not know what to say. For starters, he couldn't say everything would be fine, because in reality it wouldn't. Her new identity could cause problems, especially if it did come to be a permanent change. And then, of course, there was the fact that this Ino was nothing like his wife. Of course, there were similarities, but he could feel the difference. It wasn't his wife in that body. Did Ino even realize what it meant to be his wife? She probably didn't, because she didn't even ask if she would be able to be his wife if the change was permanent. Naruto sighed. He was not in her heart, unlike their children. We'll find a solution, Naruto stated as he looked away. You won't be stuck here. Ino couldn't help but feel slightly rejected. Don't you want me here? Naruto closed his eyes. That's not what I meant. You heard what Karen said, you're unstable. Keeping you here is dangerous. Dangerous for who exactly? Ino asked, raising her voice a little. She knew the reasons, but she was purposefully burying them deep down, because she wanted to be here. She wanted to be with her children. For you, Naruto replied, calmly, what's wrong with you? Why are you so hung up on staying now? Ino bit her lip. I remembered giving birth to Kagaya. Naruto spun around, surprised. No, that was impossible. There was no way she could have his wife's memories, could there? She was a completely different person, another soul in a foreign body. Memories were in the mind, weren't they? How could she remember something that never actually happened to her? Naruto knew they were treading in dangerous waters now. Don't get attached, Ino, Naruto warned, you're already attached to this world enough. Getting into deep could cause problems. Ino stood up, enraged. I thought you would be happy. Don't you want your wife back? If I have some memories, doesn't that mean I can sympathize with you now? I can help you. You will never replace her. Naruto yelled before he knew what he was doing. Ino dropped the photo album in her arm. A pained expression crossed her face. Naruto felt regret pool in his stomach, then he turned on his heel and stomped away. They'd never argued before. Ino felt strangely empty as she bent down to pick up the photo album she dropped. She supposed arguing was normal for married couples, but she had never once argued with Naruto since she arrived in this world. She felt guilty, she knew she was pushing him. She knew she couldn't replace his wife. And she knew she couldn't stay here, but deep down she wished she could. She loved Kagaya and Minato, the thought of not being with them was painful. Ino collapsed on the chair and buried her face in her hands. What was she supposed to do? A knot formed in her stomach, followed by a very uncomfortable churning. Ino swallowed hard, but the feeling would not go away. She frowned and before she knew it, she was running for the bathroom where she puked her guts out. After she washed her mouth, Ino stared at herself in the mirror. For the first time since she woke up in her other self's body, she could see that they were the same person, but at the same time not. Ino closed her eyes and wept. Ino left the house. Breakfast had been silent and awkward, for Naruto was ignoring Ino completely. The children didn't seem to notice the tension, but Ino had a feeling Kagaya might have picked up some of the tension. It was a sunny day, and Ino wandered through the streets wondering what she could do to entertain herself. Requesting a mission was not an option, for then she would have to talk to Naruto and she was really not in the mood. Not only that, she wasn't even sure if her other self even did missions anymore. She could always go to work, but Ino didn't feel like working with plants either. So, she decided to wander, her eyes focused on her feet and she slumped through the village. She was so lost in her misery, that she did not notice the woman in front of her. Bang! Ino stumbled backwards, having bumped into someone. She quickly gathered her senses, looked up, wanting to apologize to the person she bumped into, only to see the face of someone she knew very well. A pair of dark eyes were watching her with a smile. Shizune? Ino asked. Shizune continued smiling. Hello, Ino. It's so lovely to see you. Ino returned the smile. Over the years Ino had grown close to Shizune, so seeing her, even in a different time or world was comforting. Ino also couldn't help herself thinking about what she knew about this older Shizune. She was married to Kakashi, and she had a daughter with him named Kana. Strange how things turned out. I'm sorry I bumped into you, Ino apologized with a blush on her cheeks. Shizune shook it off. That's quite alright, Shizune said gently, everyone has bad days. Are you alright? Yes, Ino lied, thank you. Where were you headed? I just had breakfast with Kakashi, Shizune stated, he's off on a mission. I'm going to see Lady Tsunade now. Ino froze. Tsunade? She hadn't even thought of the previous Hokage at all since she arrived here. So she was still alive. Why don't you join me? Shizune offered. Ino agreed, a part of her wanted to see Tsunade again too. Tsunade was in hospital. At first Ino thought the reason they were headed to the hospital was because Tsunade was on duty, but it turns out the former Hokage and medic was a patient now. When they reached her room, Tsunade was reading a book about anatomy. Did you bring food? Was the first words that escaped her mouth. Shizune laughed and pulled out a packed lunch from her bag and handed it to the elderly woman, who Ino only now noticed did indeed look older than what she remembered. Tsunade immediately dug into the food like a starved man. Shizune watched with a smile, while Ino just felt confused. Oh, Tsunade finally said in between her bites of rice, hello Ino, didn't see you. Hello Lady Tsunade, Ino greeted with a bow. Tsunade gave her a funny look. Sheesh, formal much? Tsunade asked, haven't seen you so uptight in a while. How's the brat? Ino had to think who the brat was for a minute, but she finally clicked. Naruto's fine. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Fine, fine. Is he not getting it up or something? A blush crept to Ino's cheeks. Now that was not something she wanted to think about, or discuss, especially with an old lady. No, everything is fine in the bedroom. Not. Tsunade snorted and took another mouthful of rice. How are your children? Shizune asked. They are well, Ino replied. Ah, Minato's birthday is coming up soon, isn't it? Tsunade asked. Ino blinked. She had not known that. Just how far was her son's birthday? And how could she, as his mother, not know of it? Why didn't Naruto tell her? I'm surprised you remember, Lady Tsunade, Shizune laughed, you forget everybody else's birthdays. Oh, shush, Tsunade barked, I don't forget everyone's birthday. I just remember Minato and Kagaya's better because I delivered them. Ino froze. She had not known that Tsunade had been her midwife either. A part of her had always thought it would probably end up Sakura, but in this world Sakura was, of course, no longer amongst the living. Yes, Shizune hummed as she pulled a chair closer and sat down. How are you feeling? Excellent, Tsunade admitted, I feel like I can attack a horde of bulls. No, scratch that, I can attack a horde of Narutos. Ha! Shizune rolled her eyes. Ino didn't know what to think. She was starting to think that perhaps Tsunade had become senile. So, Tsunade started, a strange look crossing her face, how's Kakashi? Shizune blushed, then swatted Tsunade's arm. None of your damn business. Spoil sport, Tsunade huffed, you used to love gossiping about him. When did you become so conservative? When you admitted my husband is attractive and wanted to pictures. Shizune shrieked. Tsunade shrugged, while Ino's mind raced. Yep. Tsunade was senile. Tsunade noticed Ino's confused expression and laughed. It was a joke. She knows that, Lady Tsunade, Shizune snorted, she was there, remember? No she wasn't, Tsunade stated blandly. Ino froze. Could it be? Yes, she was. Shizune retorted. Tsunade's eyes narrowed and she motioned for Shizune to hush. Shizune frowned. Our Ino was there, Tsunade admitted, but not this one. Shizune was frowning now. What the hell are you on about? How did you know? Ino asked, ignoring Shizune. Tsunade smiled. Your chakra is disrupted. I've seen it before. Ino's eyes widened. You've seen this kind of thing before? Oh yes, Tsunade nodded. What is going on here? Shizune asked, glancing between the two blondes. Where did you see it? Ino asked, a sudden hope blooming. Could this be the answer? Would she finally be able to go home? Would this be the blessing she needed to apologize to Naruto for the argument they had that morning? I'm a medic, Ino, Tsunade stated. I take care of mishaps when they happen when someone is developing new techniques. Your other self was one of them. Ino did not understand. What was Tsunade trying to prove by mentioning the fact that her other self had attempted to create a new technique? What did have to do with anything? Tsunade chuckled again, clearly amused by Ino's confusion. Your other self came to me, with her entire chakra system disrupted, Tsunade pointed out, and memories and knowledge from another being was bleeding into hers. Do you understand now? I had to reverse those effects, for it was killing her. A deathly silence fell over them. The silence was broken when there was a knock on the door. It was Naruto. It came to him when he was working on paperwork for the upcoming summit in the Land of Iron. Uzumaki Naruto dropped his pen in shock, then he quickly opened his drawers and shuffled through them until he found the small battered notebook that belonged to his wife. He stared at the cover for several seconds, then he pulled out the research Gaara had brought regarding dimensions. Could it be? Naruto quickly flipped through the notebook, skimming over the notes in a rush. Finally he found what he was looking for written in bold letters, followed by detailed explanations. He did not fail to see the large red print his wife had scribbled in much later, forbidden. Naruto could no longer just sit to the side. Why hadn't he thought of this before? The answer was staring him straight in the face. Naruto dropped what he was doing, tucked the notebook under his arm and scurried from his office. He had to talk to Tsunade. When Naruto approached Tsunade's room, he heard voices. At first he assumed that Shizune had come to visit once again, but there was a third voice, one he knew very well. Ino was here. Curious, Naruto pressed his ear against the door and listened for several minutes. They were talking about Tsunade's obsession with teasing Shizune regarding Kakashi. Naruto had to stifle a laugh. The old woman never left poor Shizune alone. However, the conversation took an interesting turn when Tsunade claimed that Ino was a different Ino. Naruto's eyes widened. So he was right. Not wanting to wait anymore, Naruto knocked on the door. He didn't even bother to wait for Tsunade's approval for him to enter. He opened the door and stepped inside, the notebook tucked under his arm. A deathly silence fell over the room. Tsunade was the one to break the silence. I thought it was you eavesdropping on us. Naruto blushed. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Tsunade waved him off. How are you, brat? Fine, Naruto replied. What about you, Granny? Tsunade smiled. I feel great for a change. I can take on a horde of your shadow clones, I reckon. Wanna try? Naruto rolled his eyes. No, you're retired, remember. The doctor will kill me if I expose you to fighting. Tsunade huffed. Shizune and Ino laughed softly. So, what do you want, brat? Tsunade asked. Naruto lifted the notebook so that Tsunade could see. She blinked, then her eyes widened when she recognized it. So you realized it too? Tsunade asked. Naruto nodded. Tsunade chuckled. I'm surprised you remember. Naruto's expression darkened. Confused, Ino glanced at Shizune, but the older woman simply shrugged. She did not understand what was going on either. I did not want to forget, Naruto whispered. Tsunade smiled weakly at him. Ino felt her chest tighten. It was the first time in a while that she had seen such a painful expression on Naruto's face. He looked so emotional. His eyes were deep pits, endless, causing her to swim in them. Just what had happened that could cause such pain within him? Tsunade sighed and motioned for Shizune to fix up her pillows for her. While Shizune puffed up the pillows and aligned them behind Tsunade's back, the former Hokage pulled out a manila folder from the drawer beside her bed. She leaned back into her stack of pillows and opened the folder, flipping through the various papers. "I've secretly been researching the phenomenon without your consent," Tsunade explained, "but I am yet to find a way to reverse the effects." Ino interrupted this time. "What are you talking about? Shizune and I are completely confused." Tsunade looked into Ino's determined eyes, then she glanced at Naruto. Naruto bit his lip, then turned to his wife. "Ino, I'm so sorry." "For what?" Ino asked. "I know how you ended up in my wife's body now," Naruto stated, causing Ino's eyes to widen in shock. "I knew all along, but I had it buried deep within my mind. I didn't want to remember." "You know what caused this? Is it what Lady Tsunade was trying to explain to me?" Ino asked, hopeful. "Do you know how to reverse it?" Naruto did not say anything for several minutes. Shizune was nervously glancing between the three blondes. She had a nagging feeling that she wasn't supposed to be hearing any of this. What did Naruto mean by Ino being in his wife's body? Were they not the same person? "Naruto," Tsunade broke the silence, "tell her the truth." Naruto sighed. "It's called 5 dimensions to heaven. It's a forbidden technique that allows the mind to pee through various dimensions to take control of another body. It was never completed because of the negative side effects, and thus the reverse is not known." Ino was speechless. A forbidden technique, and one that could pee through dimensions. Was that even possible? Who could possibly have developed such a thing? Ino turned to Tsunade. "Is this what happened to Ino? Is this what caused her to nearly die?" Tsunade nodded. "But didn't you heal her?" Ino asked. Tsunade's expression darkened. "No," the 5th Hokage replied. "Ino woke up one day completely healed and free from the technique. We still don't know what caused it to reverse." Ino tightened her hands into fists. So did that mean she could not be healed at all? Was she stuck in this body until it suddenly decided to reverse itself? And if the technique was not completed when older Ino had another mind within her head, then does that mean the technique was now more developed, since she completely changed bodies? Naruto must have read her mind. Someone must have stolen the technique's notes and developed it further. Possibly even completed it, because this time the effects are far more developed than the previous time. Tsunade nodded in agreement. "Who created this technique?" Ino asked. Naruto and Tsunade glanced at each other, then they both turned to Ino. "You did," they said in unison. Ino stared at the old battered notebook in her hands. Naruto had given it to her when they left Tsunade's room. "You should have it, Ino. My wife created the 5 dimensions to heaven. Maybe that means you are the only one who can reverse it. After all, you are still the same person, although from different dimensions." Naruto had told her when he handed it to her. Ino still could not believe that her other self had developed something so powerful. And as she flipped through the notebook, Ino couldn't help but notice the similarities it had to mind transfer. Older Ino clearly used the basis of mind transfer to develop the forbidden technique. However, the further she got into the notes, she realized just how complicated the technique was, and the more she feared that she would never be able to find the answer. Meanwhile, with 37-year-old Ino, it looked like it was going to rain. Ino stared at the dark clouds hovering above her in the sky, then with a sigh she stumbled into the busy center of Konoha. She wasn't sure what it was, but something seemed off. Maybe it was just the terrible weather, or maybe there really was something eerie brewing in the village. As Ino passed buildings she knew, and ones she had never seen before, she felt herself longing for her own home. She missed being in her own body, with her family and her husband. She missed Naruto. His other self could never replace the man she married. They unfortunately had enough differences to almost be separate entities. However, Ino knew there was not much she could do at the very moment. After all, she had absolutely no notes regarding the 5 dimensions to heaven, so she could not immediately jump into deciphering the reverse. When Ino ped an old battered building, she froze. She turned on her heels and faced the building, alarms going off within her. She recognized the building, but she just could not remember where. Curious, she peeked through the fence, but it was quiet. Determined, she opened the gate and approached the front door and knocked. No answer. She peeked in through the windows, but the furniture was old, worn out and covered in dust and spider webs. Clearly no one lived here. Ino walked around the house to peek in through another window. The room was large and filled with empty racks. Ino recognized the symbol that was engraved on the wood of the racks. Her eyes widened. It didn't make sense. Why was Hyuga Astra's shop in such a state? And why was the woman, who was obviously much younger, not around when her shop clearly already exists? 16-year-old Ino. The next few mornings were uncomfortable for Ino. She was woken up by a terrible headache, followed by nausea. Naruto stayed by her side mostly, always rubbing her back when she was puking her guts out into the toilet and carrying water to her. Ino was grateful that he was by her side. This morning the nausea was 10 times worse. After emptying her gut for the third time, Ino collapsed against the bathtub, her skin pale. Naruto watched her worried. "I'm sorry," Ino croaked. "I don't know what's going on. I just suddenly got sick." Naruto smiled weakly. "Don't apologize. I'm just worried about your health. You can't keep a thing down." Silence fell over them. Ino got up slowly and washed her face. She felt terrible, and she was really worried about her own health. She knew that her body was lacking the nutrition it needed, but no matter what she ate, nothing would stay in. At first she thought it was a bug, but now, her eyes widened. No, surely she would have noticed pregnancy earlier, right? Ino turned to Naruto, her eyes wide. "Maybe I'm pregnant." Naruto frowned. "I suppose that's possible, but wouldn't you have noticed earlier? You told Sasuke quite a while ago that you were not expecting." "Maybe I didn't realize," Ino admitted. "Even the best medic could miss some things." "I'll call Karen," Naruto stated. "She can check for any sign of the baby's chakra. Then, we get you to a medic." "Tsunade," Ino blurted out. "She's retired, Ino," Naruto started, but Ino interrupted by shaking her head. "And this pregnancy is a special case," Ino admitted. "This baby isn't mine, Naruto. I've never had before." Naruto blinked. He had not known that, but a part of him had suspected that might be the case. And although he knew it wasn't supposed to be an overjoyous time because of the dangers this pregnancy could pose, Naruto felt extremely giddy. He was going to be a father again. "No," Karen said blandly, "I do not sense another chakra, but there are traces of a foreign chakra. I've never noticed it before. I obviously was not diving deep enough." Naruto, Ino, Sasuke and Karen were gathered around the Uchiha dining table. The children were playing outside with Suigetsu, who Ino was yet to meet. Naruto was frowning and appeared to be in deep thought. "Is it possibly a baby's chakra? Or remnants of it?" Sasuke asked. Karen shrugged, but did look close her eyes again to concentrate on the chakra. After a few minutes Karen opened her eyes again. "It is similar to the remnants of chakra when a woman miscarriages," Karen admitted, "which means it could possibly be the baby." "Are you saying I had a miscarriage?" Ino asked, horrified. How could she have had a miscarriage without realizing it? Karen shook her head. "No, it is similar, but I don't think you miscarried. Perhaps you should get blood tests done." Ino nodded. Naruto had already contacted Tsunade, who immediately agreed to have a look. Naruto also contacted Shikamaru, since his excellent mind might be useful in this strange phenomenon. Silence fell over the room. Ino felt very awkward, so she turned her attention to the painting of the Uchiha family. "Hey, Sasuke," a male voice interrupted the silence, "are there any more water flasks in the fridge?" Everyone's attention turned to a man with white hair that just stepped into the room. Ino did not recognize him. The male grinned, showing off pointy teeth. Hey, it's the Hokage and his wife. Hi. Suigetsu, was Naruto's greeting. Ino had a feeling that the man was Suigetsu. Who else would have come from the backyard that was an adult? Karen was pissed off. I refilled all 40 of them this morning. Suigetsu narrowed his eyes. Was I asking you? And 40 aren't enough. Refill your own flasks, moron. Karen hissed. Bitch, Suigetsu muttered, then he turned around and stomped away. Sasuke merely rolled his eyes. Karen turned to her husband. When this fourth baby is born, she moaned, that idiot is moving out. I've had enough. With that, Karen stood up and stomped out of the room. Should we go? Naruto asked. Clearly those two have argued all day again. Sasuke smiled. Indeed, they had a food fight this morning. She'll get over it. She won't really kick him out, will she? Ino asked. Nah, was Sasuke's response. Ino wasn't so sure, so she excused herself from the table to go find Suigetsu. She found him outside with the children in the plastic pool. He really did love water, and the children seemed to love him. They were laughing and throwing water balloons at each other. Oh, hi Hokage's wife, Suigetsu greeted. It's Ino, Ino stated. Right, Suigetsu nodded. I just wanted to propose something, Ino started, but then trailed off. Suigetsu watched her and waited. Finally Ino shrugged her doubts off. If you ever need any help, or a friend, or ever a house, please don't hesitate to come to us. Naruto and I would be glad to be of stance. Suigetsu blinked, then grinned. Sure, thanks. Wish all Konoha leaders were so nice. What do you mean? Ino asked, confused. Suigetsu's smile faded. Sasuke, Karen and I, we had another friend. A teammate. Without him, we're not complete, you know. What happened to him? Ino asked. They threw him in prison, Suigetsu admitted, declared him insane. Ino took in a sharp breath. I'm sorry. Suigetsu shrugged. No worries. Your husband has been fighting for his freedom. Maybe one day he'll be released and we can be a team again. Ino nodded, then watched as Suigetsu joined the children again. Ino and Naruto walked to the hospital together, greeting a few people along the way. Ino was thinking about what Suigetsu had told her. She found it very admirable that Naruto was fighting for their friend. Somehow she wished she could make a difference too. Naruto. Ino called out. Naruto walked slower, so that they would be walking next to each other. Yeah, was his response. Suigetsu told me about their friend, Ino admitted, the one in the asylum. Naruto frowned, then his eyes widened in recognition. Oh, you mean Jugo. What's wrong with him? Ino asked. Naruto tapped his chin. I wouldn't say there is much wrong with him. He has a brilliant mind, and probably the kindest soul I have ever met. So how come he is considered insane? I think that's just an excuse to lock him up, Naruto said. People fear him, Ino. He is the origin of Orochimaru's cursed seal technique. Unfortunately his abilities tend to make him go berserk from time to time. Ino was surprised. She had not expected him to be the origin of Orochimaru's cursed seal technique. In fact, the memory of Orochimaru made Ino shiver. He took Sasuke away. But he can be controlled, Naruto admitted. Sasuke has the ability to calm him. Jugo loves Sasuke, they are like brothers. However, not many trust Sasuke either. So you're fighting for both of them? Ino asked. Naruto nodded. Ino smiled. I want to help. Really? Naruto asked, surprised. Ino nodded. She really did. She wanted to give Suigetsu something, and she wanted to allow Jugo and Sasuke to reunite. They deserved it. Naruto smiled at Ino warmly. That's great. Ino returned the smile. So, when do I get to meet him? I'll take you there as soon as I can get the permission, Naruto replied. Unfortunately we cannot just show up, he is a special case. Ino nodded. Tsunade did the basic checkup, then she let a nurse take Ino's blood for testing. Ino sat by Tsunade's bedside, patiently waiting for the results, since the nurse claimed they would immediately go through the procedure. Shikamaru sat on Tsunade's other side. Finally, the nurse returned with the results. Tsunade took the documents off her, and dismissed her. The nurse left. Tsunade flipped through the papers, her expression darkening, then she placed the documents on her lap and turned to Ino with a serious look. "You are pregnant," Tsunade said. Ino inhaled deeply, then tried to swallow the lump that suddenly formed in her throat. Shikamaru had his hands together, already thinking. Naruto, who had been pacing around the room, stopped and turned to Tsunade. "And it is hers, my wife's baby, yes. I believe so," Tsunade said. "Ino here claims she is a virgin, so we'll take her word for it." "Women can become pregnant without penetration actually happening," Shikamaru admitted. "I have not been anywhere near a man's genitals either." Ino hissed, embered. Shikamaru sighed, then nodded. "Is this a side effect from the technique, perhaps?" Naruto suggested. Tsunade frowned, while Shikamaru looked up at Naruto. "I think you might have caught something there, Naruto," Shikamaru admitted. "Perhaps this is some sort of side effect." "Karen said she could not sense the baby, right?" Naruto nodded. Shikamaru turned to Tsunade. "And you? Can you sense or feel the baby?" Tsunade shook her head. "It's there, but it's not. It's very strange." Shikamaru nodded. "Then perhaps, the technique does not transfer just the mind through dimensions." Ino felt her stomach drop. Silence fell over the room as all the blondes stared at Shikamaru in shock. "Are you saying that the technique can transfer tissue as well?" Tsunade finally broke the silence. "Well," Shikamaru shrugged, "I've heard of weirder things happening." Naruto was pacing again. "If that really is what happened, then my wife, 37-year-old, is currently not only in another body, but she also has our child there with her." "In essence, yes," Shikamaru answered. Naruto sighed and collapsed on a chair next to Ino, who was still frozen like a rock. "What are we going to do?" Naruto asked as he ran his hands through his blonde hair. "This technique is already dangerous as it is, now it has dragged an innocent life into it as well." "We'll fix this, Naruto," Tsunade whispered calmly, "I promise." "I have to leave for a few days," Naruto stated one morning at breakfast. Minato moaned, but one look from his father shut him up. Kagaya did not say a word. Ino looked up, curious. "Where are you going?" Ino asked. She doubted it was mission. The Hokage almost never left the village. "The Land of Iron," Naruto admitted. "There's a cage summit. We have one very year." "Oh," was all Ino said for a while. Then, "Do you go alone?" "I have 2 guards, Naruto replied, "and usually Ino, you attend with me." Minato and Kagaya were giving their parents odd looks now. Why did Ino ask about the summit when she went with Naruto every year? Why did Naruto talk of Ino as if she wasn't there? Naruto and Ino noticed the children's curious looks, so they changed the subject. Minato forgot about the event, but Kagaya wasn't one to easily ignore something like it. There was something going on, and she didn't like it. Naruto was in the study, having decided not to go into work until the afternoon. Ino knocked on the door and slipped inside. Naruto was studying a very old scroll. "Naruto." Ino called out to him, hoping she wasn't disturbing him. "Yes." Naruto looked up. "Can I go with you to the summit?" Ino asked. Naruto blinked in surprise. "I thought you would like to stay with the children," Naruto said, but Ino shook her head. Naruto blinked again, then smiled. "Sure. You're welcome to." Ino thanked him and slipped to her desk. She gently moved her fingers over the notebook about the 5 dimensions to heaven, then she sat down and opened a book about dimensions. She had been studying the theory for days, but she still couldn't find any solutions. Ino has just gotten engrossed with her book, when Naruto called her name. She looked up, surprised to see him standing before her desk. She had not heard him move. He handed her a scroll. What is it? Ino asked. Approval, Naruto stated. You can visit Jugo now. Ino jumped up, excited. Really? Thank you. And with her excitement, Ino pulled Naruto into a hug. He laughed and returned the gesture. The location of Jugo's cell was an isolated asylum on the outskirts of the village. The building was not very large, and went downstairs the minute you stepped through the door. Ino glanced behind her before descending into the unknown, feeling disgust at the fact that none of the patients probably ever saw enough sunlight. As she took a step down into the darkness, she realized just how dark the world truly was. She couldn't be an ignorant 16-year-old anymore. The reception area was small, with a GL wall separating the visitors from the nurses on duty. There was no waiting area. Ino nervously approached the reception desk and rung the small bell. A nurse dressed in a gray tunic entered through a heavy metal door. How can I help you? She asked with a forced smile. My name is Yama, Uzumaki Ino. Ino introduced herself, stumbling over her name. I am here to see Jugo. She handed the scroll to the nurse. The nurse opened the scroll and scanned over it briefly, then she wrapped it up and looked back up at Ino, her forced smile still on her face. Indeed, she muttered, wait here, Lady Ino. I'll contact the head nurse for you. The nurse disappeared behind the metal door. A few minutes passed, and the door opened again. This time a different nurse stepped in, also dressed in a gray tunic, but with a large red cross stitched to her bust. Hello, she greeted. Her voice was warm, and her smile was genuine. It has been a long time, Lady Ino. Ino trailed off. Yeah. Ino wasn't sure how she knew this woman. Might as well go along with it. Please, the nurse began, step through. Mai opened the door that lead into the GL contained area. Ino stepped inside, not missing the sudden change in temperature. Mai closed the door behind them. Could I ask you to leave all your belongings here? Of course, Ino agreed, removing her bag from her shoulder and tucking it in a locker Mai showed her. Mai then gestured for Ino to follow her through the heavy metal door. They were in a long corridor, painted white with two pot plants sitting against one of the walls. Further, there was nothing but doors. Jugo never gets visitors, Mai explained. That Uchiha boy has requested permission several times, but always gets denied. Poor thing. He loves Jugo very much. Is Jugo really dangerous? Ino asked. Heavens no, Mai exclaimed. He is misunderstood, that is all. I suppose he is dangerous when he loses control, but what people fail to realize is that he can be controlled. Blinded by fear, Ino stated. Mai nodded. Lord Hokage has been trying to free Jugo, Mai stated solemnly, but the council has not approved any of his suggestions yet. He might be the highest ranking officer, but the Hokage cannot really do anything alone. Why did I marry a politician? Ino asked. Mai laughed. They stepped in front of a door. This is it, Mai pointed out. Jugo just had lunch, so he should be reading now. He reads? Ino asked, surprised. Mai smiled. All the time. It's all he ever does. Mai knocked on the door, then opened it and stepped inside. Jugo, she called out to him, there is someone here to see you. Can you spare a minute? Ino stepped out from behind Mai, expecting to see a frightening sight, but she met something completely different. Jugo had a strong build, which did make him slightly intimidating, but he had gentle eyes. When he looked up from his book, The Tale of Genji, he seemed genuinely surprised, but also patiently calm. This is Uzumaki Ino, Mai introduced Ino, she is the Hokage's wife, Jugo concluded. Mai smiled and nodded. Thank you, Mai. Mai nodded and excused herself, giving Ino a warm smile. An awkward silence followed. Ino remained where she stood, not sure whether she should sit down or shake hands with Jugo or something. Jugo felt very much the same. It has been so long since someone from outside came to see him, that he had no idea how to approach her. Ino decided to break the silence on a whim. Is the food good? She blurted out, only to realize that the question was absolutely absurd. A blush crept to her cheeks when Jugo burst out laughing. You are definitely his wife, Jugo said in between his laughs. I'm sorry, Ino muttered, embered, I didn't know what to say. Jugo shook his head and closed his book. He moved from his bed and approached the small table in the corner. He gestured for Ino to sit opposite him. She complied, but not before looking around the room. It was empty, with only a bed, a table and 2 chairs. There were no signs of it being home, there were no windows. It was a dark, empty abyss. Ino sat down, noticed that the chair was cheap and squeaked under her weight. Either that, or it had suffered torture from a mad being that swung it around. Ino glanced at Jugo. Could this calm, beautiful man truly be a monster, like everyone claimed he was? No, Suigetsu and Naruto had told her what he was like. He couldn't be a monster. Not truly. How is Sasuke? Jugo asked. Ino was surprised that he would ask that first. He is well. Karen is pregnant again. Jugo's features lit up. A 4th one. Brilliant. Ino smiled at his enthusiasm. Do you like kids, Jugo? Yes. He whispered. Do you have any of your own? Yes. A daughter. She was a baby the last time I saw her. Ino did not know what to say, but when she noticed the pained expression on Jugo's face, she felt guilty for bringing the topic up. It's all right, Jugo suddenly stated, I don't mind you asking. Ino smiled. Had he read her mind? Do you hate being locked up? No, Jugo replied after a few seconds silence, no, I don't hate it. I prefer it. Ino frowned. Jugo noticed. It means I can't harm anyone, Jugo continued. This way, all I ever destroy are chairs. It's better this way. I'm a monster. Surely you don't really think that? Ino asked. Jugo smiled weakly. Something tugged at Ino's heart then. Maybe she pitied him, or maybe she truly felt something for him, but she knew she couldn't let him rot down in this dark cell for the rest of his life. He had a daughter. A child he obviously loved, but could never see or touch. What kind of parents could ever live without a child's smile? What's her name? Ino changed the subject. Jugo seemed surprised. Kasumi, Jugo finally whispered. Ino smiled. That's a beautiful name. Did you choose it? Jugo shook his head. No, I'm terrible with names. Shizuka chose the name. She was named after Shizuka's late lover, Sagiri. And you're okay with that? Ino asked. Yes. Shizuka will always love him, at least partially deep down in her heart. Ino smiled. And where is Shizuka and Kasumi now? Jugo closed his eyes, then turned his attention away and focused on the door instead. Ino bit her lip. She wasn't sure what to expect. I don't know, Jugo finally admitted. Shizuka is the leader of her village. She probably went back, and took Kasumi with her. Does she visit? No, she never has. Ino's heart ached for him. Is it alright if I come again? Ino asked as Mai lead her outside. Of course, Mai agreed, come whenever you like. Ino thanked her, then slowly made her way back up the stairs, where she was greeted by the sun. Ino shielded her eyes from the bright light and looked into the distance. Konoha. Did the people even know the dark, dirty secrets of their own home? Did they know that every day, they practically walked over a prison? Ino was disgusted. She was going to make this right. Jugo deserved that much. Welcome home, Naruto greeted from the kitchen when Ino returned. Ino pulled off her shoes and made her way to the kitchen. She was exhausted, having stopped by work to check on a few things. Kana seemed to have everything in order. How did the meeting go? Naruto asked as he added more salt to whatever he was cooking. It went well, Ino stated, but her emotions were not agreeing with what she said. Feeling a heavy weight on her chest, Ino approached Naruto slowly, stopping a few inches away from him. He watched her curiously, putting down the salt shaker and turning to face her. Ino. He gently called out her name, lifting his arm and gently caressed her cheek with his warm fingers. Ino closed her eyes and sighed at his touch. She needed to be comforted. Feeling bold, Ino took a step closer and buried her face in his chest. He did not tense. He merely sighed and wrapped his arms around her. It's okay. Everything will work out. He is lonely, Naruto, Ino muttered. He wants to see his daughter, although he didn't admit it out loud. But I could see it in his eyes. He wants to see her desperately. Shizuka too. I know, Naruto whispered, I know. Can't we allow him that? Just that little contact with his family for the time being? Ino asked, pulling away far enough to look Naruto in the eye. Naruto stared at her for several seconds, then closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against hers. I tried, Naruto admitted. I've contacted Shizuka several times. She never replied. Where is she? Ino asked. I'll contact her this time. Maybe she'll listen to me. Naruto smiled. You're not giving up, are you? No. Ino smirked. Sound familiar, never giving up. Naruto chuckled. A little, yes. Shizuka is the leader of Nadeshiko village. So she can come see Jugo? Ino asked. Yes. Ino smiled warmly, and before she thought it through, planted a soft kiss on Naruto's lips. His eyes widened, but Ino thought nothing of it and broke free from his grasp, returning to the study so that she could start writing a letter for Shizuka. In the silence of the kitchen, Naruto absently touched his now tingling lips. The sun had just crept from its resting place, casting a bright glaze over Konoha. Ino was lying in bed, her eyes wide open. Everyone was still asleep, but she couldn't sleep any longer. Her mind raced and her heart was heavy with trouble. Don't let everything bother you, Naruto's voice suddenly said from behind her. Ino nearly jumped out of her skin. She had not known that he was awake. She felt him move behind her and not wanting him to stare at her backside, she turned to face him. His blue eyes were glazed and he seemed to still be half asleep. It was cute, in its own little way. I can't help it, Ino muttered, everything is just messed up. I know, was Naruto's reply. Does it bother you? What? Sharing a bed with me? Naruto snorted and closed his eyes. No. But I'm not your Ino, Ino stated, I'm just in her body. Why doesn't it bother you? Naruto sighed and opened his eyes again. And you kissed me, so we're both guilty, aren't we? A blush crept to Ino's cheeks. She hadn't meant to kiss him, it was a spur of the moment thing. Naruto smirked and dropped her arm over her waist. Might as well go with it, we're both going to hell anyway. Are you trying to be funny? Ino asked. Is it working? Kind of. Naruto's smirk widened. Ino sighed and moved closer to him. She had to admit, he probably had a point. To hell with it, she liked him and she was going to enjoy him while she could. After all, there still was no guarantee that things would go back to normal. What if she had to stay his wife for the rest of her life? Where do the kids go while we're at the summit? Ino changed the subject. They stay with mother and father, usually, Naruto replied. Hinata attends the summit herself. Sasuke is my guard and Karen can't look after 6 kids by herself. Ino mumbled in response. What about Hinata's kids, then? They have a grandfather, you know. Ino rolled her eyes, but a smile formed on her face. She had to admit, she found it endearing when Naruto called her parents, mother, and father. It meant they were there for him, that he wasn't alone anymore. Being an orphan must be tough. Ino could not fathom it. Feeling bold, Ino snuggled against him, enjoying the feel of his warm skin against hers. Naruto did not seem to mind. Tell me something about your Ino, Ino suddenly piped up after a short silence. Like what? Naruto asked. Anything. Naruto was quiet for several seconds, probably thinking of something good to share. She has very strongly developed morals. She doesn't take shit from anyone. I used to call her my own little feminist. Ino chuckled. Has a temper, then. Worse than Sakura's, Naruto replied, but don't tell her I said that. Ino chuckled again, but she did not forget to lament silently for her friend's ping. Having no Sakura in this dimension was strange. Now your turn, Naruto pointed out. Huh, tell me something about your Naruto. But not something obvious. Not much to say, Ino admitted, I wasn't really close with him. But I was happy to see him again after he returned from training. Did you train with Jiraiya? Unfortunately, Naruto grumbled. Ino laughed. It's only recently that I started to notice that he's not that bad looking, Ino continued. Naruto snorted and tightened his grip on her waist. Darlin', he whispered huskily, we're the epitome of why. When did you get so full of yourself? I've always been like this, Naruto pointed out innocently. As if, Ino laughed as she playfully hit his bare chest. Naruto chuckled and buried his nose in her hair. Ino felt her heartbeat speed up a notch. Things are changing, aren't they? Ino suddenly asked. Was the mumbled response she received. Ino sighed and closed her eyes, enjoying the last few moments of the morning, burying the guilt of sharing a bed with another's husband deep within her consciousness. Gaara had a very keen eye. His sister had pointed it out to him quite a while ago. Gaara saw things others didn't, and that's what made him successful. However, Gaara knew that his gift to see didn't come to him on its own. No, he learned it from someone. Someone he cared for more than anything, except maybe not as much as he loved his family. Uzumaki Naruto taught him how to see. Ever since the blonde had defeated him, Gaara saw the world in a different light. It was like his eyes opened for the first time. And now Gaara could see the storm coming. Not sleeping again. A voice interrupted his thoughts. Gaara turned his attention away from the sunrise and turned to face the door that led to the balcony instead. Hinata was watching him with a worried expression, her arms wrapped protectively around her swollen belly. You know I won't ever truly fully recover, Gaara replied. Hinata nodded. She knew that her husband would never be able to sleep like a normal person, but that didn't mean she could still hope. With a small smile, she approached her husband and leaned against him, her lavender eyes focused on the sunrise. You can feel something, can't you? Hinata asked. Yes, was the response, something is coming. Something big. Hinata closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. Gaara lifted his arm and wrapped it around her shoulders when she shivered. Madoka, she suddenly whispered, the wind carrying the name with it. Gaara looked down at his wife in confusion. I want to name her Madoka, Hinata continued, if she's a girl. A small smile tugged at Gaara's lips. Hinata knew that his silence was his approval of the name. However, she also knew his silence was an end for worry. The annual Cage Summit was just around the corner, and he didn't want her to travel the distance so far into her pregnancy. But Hinata knew she couldn't just stay. Gaara felt a storm brewing, which meant trouble, and she was not going to allow trouble to rip them apart. I love you, Hinata whispered. Once again, Gaara did not reply, but she knew he loved her too. Kakashi and Shizune are coming over for dinner tonight, Naruto stated as he pulled on his robe. Ino nodded and handed him his hat. Naruto took it with a grateful smile. He placed it on his head and locked gazes with his wife. Everything is going to fine, Naruto stated, things will work itself out. You just keep studying that notebook, okay? Ino nodded again. Naruto stepped closer and pushed a stray lock of hair behind Ino's ear. She shivered at his touch. I know we probably shouldn't. Naruto began, but trailed off when Ino placed her finger on his lips. She smiled and shook her head. Naruto sighed in defeat and dropped his arm, stepping even closer, never breaking eye contact. May I? Ino's small nod of confirmation was more than enough. Naruto leaned down and locked his lips with hers. A powerful surge of emotion swept through both of them as their lips touched. They both knew they were falling into deep, but neither of them cared. The day swept by in a flash. Before Ino knew it, she was preparing dinner for their guests. Of course, neither the guests or Naruto had arrived yet, but she was keen to impress. Minato was drawing with crayons behind her on the floor and Kagaya was outside training. Minato was humming a familiar tune and it touched Ino's heartstrings. She was really settling into her life here, and she wasn't sure if it was a good thing. The doorbell snapped her from her reverie. Leaving the broth for the noodles boiling, Ino wiped her hands on her apron and went to open the door. She knew it would be Kakashi and Shizune. Naruto never knocked or used the doorbell. Ino had to admit, she was nervous. Shizune knew the truth about her, but Kakashi didn't. Although he'd probably easily work it out the minute he saw her. She was also nervous because she had never met Kakashi in this dimension. What was he like? The same. Different. She got her answer when the door opened. Ino had to do everything in her power not to let her jaw drop. Hitaki Kakashi was not wearing his mask. In all the years that she had known him, Ino knew that almost no one had ever seen him without his mask and it was an ongoing mission for Naruto to find out what the man hid beneath the dark cover. She had to admit, she was curious too, but now that she finally witnessed it, she had no idea what to think. Alright, so Hitaki Kakashi was breathtakingly handsome, even for someone as old as he was. Why he wore a mask was a mystery. Why hide such a beautiful warm smile and high cheekbones? Ino had to admit, she was speechless. Seems we have surprised her. Shizune broke the silence with a knowing smile. How so? Kakashi asked, an eyebrow raised as he glanced at his wife. Shizune gave him a pointed look. Kakashi's attention returned to Ino and realization dawned on his face. Ah, I see now. Interesting. I'm sorry, what? Ino asked. Kakashi smiled, which was really weird without the mask. I don't need Sharingan to figure out you're different, Ino. Nevertheless, can we come in? Oh, yes, Ino mumbled as she stepped aside. Smells delicious, Shizune commented on their way down the hall to the kitchen. I'm making soba noodles, Ino stated, the sauce is boiling at the moment. Well, part of it. Lovely, Shizune hummed, I haven't had soba in ages. Neither have I, Kakashi agreed, but his attention was not focused on the women anymore. Uncle Kakashi, Minato exclaimed excitedly as he hopped up and ran into the man's arms. Hey kiddo, Kakashi greeted in return as he lifted Minato up into the air, and then to his. What are you drawing? Mr. Pakun. Minato grinned, but I think I made his head too big. Oh dear, Kakashi said, a twinkle in his eye. Ino watched amazed as Kakashi sat down with Minato and started to draw. Shizune chuckled at the blonde's amazement. Kana sends her love, Shizune said, she had a date tonight, so she couldn't make it. That's alright, Ino smiled, who does she have a date with? Oh, she's seeing Guy's oldest, Shizune replied, I find it highly amusing and ironic that the two rivals' children ended up dating. Kakashi does not quite agree with me. Ino laughed. That would be a sight. The calm, collected daughter of Hitaki Kakashi and the wild, energetic son of Maida Guy. I haven't seen Guy at all, Ino whispered to Shizune, or met any of his family. Oh, Shizune whispered back, well, I'm sure they'll pop up eventually. They are very hard to miss. Ino laughed again. Just then, Naruto returned from work. The two men greeted each other with a tough handshake, but Ino did not miss the affectionate teacher-student pat on the back the two exchanged. Shizune received a hug instead of a handshake. Ino was greeted with a warm kiss for the second time that day. Her insides tingled when he pulled away. Shizune gave her a knowing smile. Isn't Sai joining us? Kakashi asked out of the blue after Naruto served drinks. Oh, yes, Naruto replied, he told me he would be a bit late. Ino frowned. She had not known that Sai was invited. Naruto smiled at her apologetically as he handed her a GL of wine. He only let me know this morning, he whispered. Ino nodded. It was all right, she had made enough food to feed an army. By the time Sai arrived, the food was ready to be served and consumed. After loud noises and chatter as they dished up, Naruto stood up and proposed a toast. Sakura is no longer with us, Naruto said, and Sasuke is on a mission, but let's toast to Team 7. Team 7. The others chimed in. Ino frowned, not sure if they were celebrating something. Naruto noticed her confusion and leaned in to whisper in her ear. Today marks the anniversary of Sakura's ping, Naruto explained. Ino's eyes widened. But instead of mourning, we're celebrating her life. A smile formed on Ino's lips as tears threatened to fall. Yes, celebration of her life was much better than mourning. There was exactly a week left before the annual Cage Summit commenced. While Naruto was preparing the village for his absence, Ino took the time to spend time with her children and preparing for the journey. She was in desperate need of a dress for the evening gala that took place after the meeting. Naruto had told her the details of the evening and that the women liked to dress up to show off their social standing as the Cage's wife. At least, that's how Naruto saw it. He thought it was funny. The thought of having to get a dress was exciting, but going back to Astra's shop was not. However, Ino knew she was not going to find anything else worthy anywhere else. If there was one thing Astra was skilled at, it was making divine dresses and kimonos. After dropping Minato off at school, Ino swallowed her uneasiness and headed down the main street towards Astra's home, which also happens to be her shop. By the time she arrived, she wasn't the only one about to knock on the door. Hinata. Hello, Ino, Hinata smiled warmly, also getting a dress for the evening gala. Yes, Ino replied. Hinata's smile widened. The door opened, revealing Astra in her fully groomed, kimono-clad glory. Ino expected her to be hostile, as she always was, but instead the woman smiled widely and welcomed Hinata into her home with open arms. She turned her smile to Ino, but the smile vanished from her eyes. Ino felt her blood run cold. Clearly Astra didn't dislike people in general, she just disliked Ino. Ino could not determine why. Come in, ladies, Astra gushed as she led Hinata into the main room, filled with racks of finely designed dresses, something special for the evening gala, I presume. Yes, Hinata said, I'd like something to suit my figure, and accommodate my belly, of course. Astra instantly jumped into showing a variety of dresses to the young leader of the Hyuga family. Ino could do nothing but watch on in envy. Astra was giving her full attention to Hinata, leaving Ino completely forgotten. Ino tried to pay no mind to the fact she could find a dress herself. Ino finally found a golden kimono. It was beautifully woven with flowers embroidered on it. The color was perfect, and it oddly reminded Ino of Naruto's hair. Hinata was still being overwhelmed by Astra's suggestions, so Ino took it as her cue to leave the money on the table and leave. She wasn't going to be the third wheel in this situation. As she walked away, though, she couldn't help but feel guilty for leaving Hinata behind all alone with the insane Astra. 37-year-old Ino. Time was ping, albeit slowly, and Ino was becoming restless. There was a constant nagging in the back of her mind that the more time passed, the worse the situation would become. It was just past noon, the air was hot and dry and Ino was bored. However, despite her state of mind, Konoha continued to move around her. It amazed her how similar the two Konohas were, yet also so very different. Her mind snapped back to the knowledge of Sasuke. She missed him, strangely enough. He and Karen were two people she knew she would have been able to trust. Now neither of them are here. Ino. A timid voice shook her from her reverie. Ino turned around, not sure what to expect. Her nerves calmed when she saw the familiar smile that belonged to her closest friend, Hinata. Hinata looked different, that could not be denied, but she was still Hinata. Hello Hinata, Ino greeted with a grin. Hinata smiled shyly. Strangely, Ino suddenly noticed that Hinata was not alone. She was so used to seeing Hinata move around the village by herself, that having a companion was so strange, she missed it. Her breath hitched in her throat, followed by tears threatening to build up in the corner of her eyes. Hello Neji. The young branch family member was studying her carefully, but he did respond to her greeting. It was strange to see him. Ino had forgotten how much Masahiro resembled his father. It was uncanny. She couldn't wait to go back to her dimension and share the encounter with Hinata. She could already imagine her best friend in tears over the news. Hinata noticed the strange looks her cousin and friend was exchanging and decided to break the awkward silence. Are you going somewhere particular? Ino turned her attention back to Hinata. No, I was just wandering. I'm bored. No missions. Neji cut in. Ino shook her head and smiled nervously. Tsunade still refused to give her missions. Neji and I were going to get something to eat, Hinata stated. You can join us, if you like. Ino grinned. Sure. I'd love to. After a satisfying lunch with Hinata and Neji, Ino excused herself and returned to her wandering. She had enjoyed her time with Hinata, but it wasn't quite the same. It was even stranger with Neji being so distant. He was nothing like the Neji she knew. Although that was to be expected. There you are, a voice cut in her thoughts. Ino rolled her eyes. Was she going to keep running into people today? It was Shikamaru. Hey, Shikamaru, Ino greeted. Shikamaru was also studying her closely, much like Neji did. What? I've noticed lately that you're different, Shikamaru pointed out. Ino swallowed nervously. She had had a feeling that Shikamaru would pick up on it quickly. He always did. And you only approach me about it now? Ino asked. I figured it was none of my business, Shikamaru pointed out, not to mention troublesome. Ino snorted. Shikamaru hasn't changed in this dimension at all. The door behind Shikamaru opened, and Ino noticed it was the famous barbecue restaurant Asuma always took them to eat. Next time you're paying, Shikamaru, Choji grumbled as he opened a bag of CS. For the second time that day Ino's blood ran cold, but this time the tears didn't just threaten to fall. They were freely flowing down her cheeks, and before she knew it she had thrown herself at her teammate. Choji dropped his bag of CS when her arms wrapped around his neck. He froze and glanced at Shikamaru. What's going on? Shikamaru was watching the scene with a calculating eye. I'm going to this version of Ino hasn't seen you in a long time. Huh, was the only response Choji could come up with. Ino was sobbing uncontrollably into his shoulder and he wasn't sure what to make of the situation. He was nervous, and a blush had already formed on his cheeks. Ino finally pulled away and looked Choji in the eyes. She had had a feeling that perhaps he would also be alive. After meeting Sakura and Neji had risen that hope, but she hadn't clutched onto it. And yet, now here he was, young and as chubby as ever. She had missed him, all of him. Chubbiness included. Sorry, Ino muttered as she wiped the tears from her eyes. Shikamaru is right. I haven't seen you in over 2 decades. Huh, was Choji reply, once again. Shikamaru smirked. And so the cat was out of the bag. Shikamaru, Choji and Ino had decided to situate themselves in the park, in a part which was usually isolated from the norm. Ino had told them her entire story, including how she had traveled from another dimension. They both listened without interrupting. I wasn't supposed to tell anyone, Ino finally said after ending her story, but I guess I can't really hide it that well. So, Choji began, our Ino is, in your dimension in your body. I have reasons to believe so, Ino replied. It explains your odd behavior, Shikamaru put in, but it doesn't explain the pregnancy. Pregnancy, Choji echoed. Ino sighed and rubbed her forehead with the palm of her hand. It's complicated. I once again have reasons to believe that the child is mine, not your Ino's. What makes you say that? Shikamaru asked, intrigued. This Ino is a virgin, Ino stated, you told me so yourself. And the pregnancy is rather peculiar, there is no physical signs of the fetus growing. I think something went wrong with the technique, and somehow tissue got transferred as well. I still don't get it, Choji muttered. Ino sighed again. So the fetus was transferred with the technique with me to this body. However, it was not able to do it properly. I have physical signs of pregnancy, but not the fetus growing. My stomach is still flat. So the baby is here with me, but at the same time, not. Which poses a danger to you both, Shikamaru piped in. Ino nodded. So basically, it can be deduced that the baby is caught between the two dimensions. Ino nodded again. You're pregnant? Choji finally clicked. Ino rolled her eyes. Do you think your body would be showing signs of a growing fetus? Shikamaru asked. Possibly, Ino replied, but I wouldn't know. I am yet to find a way to communicate with your Ino. You can do that? Choji asked. I should be able to, Ino said. Something similar has happened before. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. Ino was fidgeting nervously. And then it clicked. You were the one who created the technique. Ino bit her lip and nodded slowly. Well, Shikamaru sighed, guess we're in for a challenge. It was as the sun started to lower over the horizon that Ino decided enough was enough. Keeping things in the dark wasn't getting her anywhere, in fact it put a damper on things. She needed to fix the problem, and the only way to do it is she had help and support. It was time she approached Tsunade. Tsunade was seated at her desk, reading over a collection of documents that needed to be signed and returned to Sunagaker. When Ino entered her office without knocking, she looked up, alarmed. You know, Tsunade began, usually people knock. I'm not people, Ino replied coldly. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. What do you want? Tsunade asked. I've had enough of keeping secrets, Ino explained. I'm not going to tell the whole world, but only those who deserve to know the truth. Tsunade's eyes widened. Knowing that this was serious, Tsunade put the document she was reading down and leaned forward in her chair, her elbows resting on the desk. We had an agreement, Tsunade stated, and you were the one that didn't want anyone to know. Originally, yes, Ino agreed, but things have changed. Tsunade raised an eyebrow as she studied Ino's face. There was determination on the young woman's face, determination Tsunade had never seen on the woman before. Perhaps that was the difference between the two Inos, or maybe younger Ino has been holding back all these years. Tsunade sat back in her chair and sighed. You love him, don't you? Tsunade asked. Ino frowned. Even though Naruto in this dimension is probably nothing like yours, you love him. Always, was the curt reply. A small smile formed on Tsunade's lips. Fine, you win. Tell them, I don't care. Just remember, if they go running in fear, don't blame me. Ino smirked. Oh, I know. Naruto was surprised when there was a knock on his door. Not many people usually came to visit him. It was probably Sakura with a batch of disgusting soldier pills. Again. So when he opened the door, he was surprised to see Ino. Oh, he mumbled, hi Ino. Ino smiled, but her erratic heartbeat was preventing her from playing it completely cool. She was nervous. She knew Naruto, but she didn't know this one that well. What if he really did go running after she told him the truth? Ino bit her lip, but then Naruto grinned at her as he invited her inside. Just that grin was enough to melt the doubt away. No, Naruto would never run. He was far too loyal and brave. She told him everything. She did not leave out any details, she even told him small things she didn't bother telling Shikamaru and Choji. And he listened. Sure, he gave her the occasional strange looks, and he did freak out at the beginning, but she had managed to calm him down. Now he was just listening. When she finished, she exhaled deeply and sat back, her legs tucked under her arms. Naruto sat opposite her, and he had not spoken a word for a while. Finally, he exhaled loudly, "Wow. I don't know what to say." A smile tugged at Ino's lips. "Rendered you speechless. I tend to do that." "Really?" Naruto asked, intrigued. "Oh, yes," Ino smirked, "all the time. Though not normally by words." Naruto furrowed his brows in confusion, then he realized what she meant. A blush crept onto his cheeks. "Oh." Ino chuckled. "So?" Naruto started awkwardly. "We're, married." Ino hummed, "In a different dimension, at least." "That's really weird." Naruto exhaled. Ino chuckled again. "Naruto," Ino whispered, "I didn't tell you to make things awkward, nor do I expect anything from you. I couldn't keep it a secret anymore. I need to go back, and I can't do it alone." Naruto shook his head. "I know, and I'd love to help, not that I know how." Ino smiled in relief. "Thank you, Naruto." Naruto returned the smile. "How about we go to our favorite place? It might spark inspiration." Standing on the Hokage monument, overlooking the village is bound to spark inspiration in almost anybody. But neither Naruto nor Ino felt like standing and watching the buzzing night life of Konoha. So, both of them had collapsed on the GR and were focused on the bright stars above. It was beautiful, and brought back so many memories for Ino. She always watched the stars back at home with Naruto. And although the Naruto next to her wasn't hers, the feeling of being complete was still there. Naruto had accepted her and the truth. It was a fact that pleased her to no end. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Naruto asked. "Yeah," Ino agreed, "there's one thing that hasn't changed in either dimension." "What's that?" "The stars," Ino whispered, "they are still as beautiful." Silence fell over them. However, it was a comfortable silence they both relished. Ino closed her eyes as a warm breeze swept over them. This wasn't her dimension, or her Konoha, but it still felt like home. Yes, she was home. If everything failed, if she could never go back, she could live here. Start again, live a new life. It didn't sound so bad. With a smile tugging on her lips, Ino rolled over to face Naruto. She opened her eyes to watch him. His gaze was still locked on the stars, the light of the moon reflecting in his blue eyes. "What's it like?" Naruto asked. "What?" Ino queried. "Having Sasuke in Konoha," Naruto whispered. "What's it like?" Something tugged at Ino at those words. She knew that jealousy was unbecoming, and being jealous of Naruto's best friend was silly, but she had hoped that he would be more interested in her and their family than his friend that has betrayed him in this dimension. Ino shook her head. No, she can't be jealous. That was unfair towards him. "Annoying," Ino finally replied. "The two of them argue constantly and usually wake me up at the most ungodly hour." Naruto smiled sadly. "That sounds like us." Sensing that Naruto was upset, Ino moved closer to him and laced her fingers with his. He was surprised by the action, but did not stop or move his gaze from the stars. Ino closed her eyes again and rested her head on Naruto's shoulder. Neither one of them said another word. 16-year-old Ino. Hyuga Astra took Hinata's money with a warm smile and thanked her for shopping for such a lovely dress again. Hinata merely brushed her thanks off and told her she deserved it. With her smile not fading, Astra led Hinata outside. "Do come by again, Lady Hinata," Astra gushed. "I always have new arrivals perfect for your complexion." "Thank you," Hinata replied, "I'll take you up on that." "Lady Ino seems to have left us early," Astra mused. "Such manners." Hinata could sense the tone of dislike in the other woman's voice, but she decided to ignore it. Ino must have left for a reason, and Hinata was not going to let this small event put a strain on her relations with her friend. "She's a busy woman, Astra," Hinata explained. She is, after all, the First Lady. People and society. Indeed, Astra grimaced, her smile still on her face, but her eyes dark. Hinata excused herself and made her way back home. Astra watched her retreating form for several minutes, then she turned around and closed the door behind her. Slowly and silently, Astra moved to the back of her home, where her bedroom was situated. It was the most isolated and private room in the house, and no one except for herself had entered it. Once she entered what she liked to call her den, she closed the door behind her and turned her attention to the large painting that rested above the fireplace. It was her most prized possession, one of the few things she had left of her previous life. It was also the most taken care of item in the room. All the other furniture was old and withered and her bed wasn't made. The wallpaper on the walls was also crumbling, and the fading flowers was obscured by strange scribbles Astra had made over time in black ink. To an outsider, it would appear as gibberish, but she knew exactly what it was. With a heavy sigh, Astra collapsed on the chair opposite the fireplace, her gaze remaining on the painting. It was a family portrait, the only one she had. There were only 3 people in it, 2 beautiful people, happily married and their young daughter. With another heavy sigh, Astra closed her eyes and willed the tears to go away. She hasn't cried in decades, she was surely not going to cry now. Her eyes opened again, her gaze still on the painting. Father, she whispered, Mother. I don't know what to do anymore. The only response she received was deathly silence. It was just past dawn, and Ino and Naruto were preparing for their departure to the Land of Iron. Kagaya and Minato were already at their grandparents' house, snuggled in their beds there. Naruto and Ino had had the evening to themselves, and spent it in the living room over a GL of wine. They didn't do much, just talk about their respectful lives. Naruto now had a much bigger insight on Ino's life. Is that for the gala? Naruto asked as Ino neatly folded her new kimono to put in her bag. She nodded. It's lovely. Although it will be even lovelier when you wear it. Ino blushed and playfully swatted him. Naruto grinned. Are you nervous? Naruto asked. A little, Ino admitted. I've never been to a cage summit. What's it like? Boring, was Naruto's curt reply. It's just a bunch of old men talking about old news. Ino chuckled. Has any of the other cage changed recently? Well, judging by your age, your dimensions Raikage and Tsuchikage must be A and Onoki respectively, Naruto stated. They've both retired since then. Well, I say retired. Ino got what he meant. Either one of them has died since then, or both of them have. She wasn't going to push it further. And the Mizukage? Ino asked. Naruto's grin widened. Oh, she's still around. Getting old, though. But don't tell her I said that. I won't, Ino promised. Is she the only female cage? Nope. Naruto piped up. The Raikage is female. Quite the temper too. I tend to stay away from her if I can. Although her temper does not rival A's, he was a madman. Ino chuckled. Alright, now I feel a bit more prepared. 3 male cage, and 2 female. I can deal with that. When they finished packing, they made sure to grab some breakfast, then proceeded to the gate where they were to meet Gaara and Hinata. The 2 were nowhere in sight, but Sasuke was already there, casually leaning against the gate. He was carrying light, and was currently only wearing a sleeveless vest and cargo pants, revealing his Anbu tattoo. Ino had never seen it before. You're early, Naruto pointed out. I'm always early, Dobi, Sasuke stated. He glanced at Ino and nodded. She nodded in return. Sai was here first, though. Really? Where is he? Naruto asked, surprised. Sasuke snorted and pointed upwards. Naruto and Ino looked up, not sure what to expect, but indeed, there Sai was. He was perched on the top of the gate, sketchbook in hand. His back was pointed to the village, so he was probably drawing the forest. Typical. Naruto laughed. Sasuke nodded in agreement. A whoosh sound suddenly swept by as Tamari landed on her feet beside them. Morning, she sang. Ah, Naruto hummed, I was wondering if Gaara was going to ask you. He always asks me, Tamari said pointedly. Well, yes, Naruto began, but trailed off. He obviously gave up on his argument. Instead, he switched to another question. Who's the second? Kankuro. Of course, Tamari said in a tone as if she was expecting it to be obvious, we're meeting him halfway. And who's acting Cage, then? Sasuke piped in. Who do you think? Tamari asked, her hands on her S. Oh, Sasuke and Naruto said in unison, followed by Sasuke continuing, lovely. I'm sure the council will love having her shouting orders at everyone. Tamari snorted. Well, Beneko knows how to handle them. And she's the only person outside of the family Gaara trusts the most. Ino was trying to follow the conversation, but she was very confused. Sasuke must have noticed her confusion. Sorry, Ino, he laughed, you have no idea who we are talking about, do you? No, Ino replied, who's Beneko? I certainly have never met her in my dimension. Sasuke frowned, but answered anyway. She's my sister-in-law. Ino's eyes widened. You mean she trailed off. She wasn't sure on how to end that sentence. She knew Itachi was probably a sensitive topic, especially since Naruto had told her the brother's history the night before. It wasn't as dark as it was from her dimension, but it was still heavy and heart-wrenching. Married Itachi? Sasuke asked. Yes. Maybe you'll be able to meet her sometime. She comes to visit from time to time. And that was the end of the story. Sasuke did not say anything more. Instead, he turned his attention to Gaara and Hinata who had just arrived. Sasuke discussed security measures with Gaara, something he probably already covered with Naruto before. Sai had also joined the conversation, finally jumping down from his spot above. You've never met Beneko? Naruto asked Ino. Ino shook her head. Am I supposed to have met her? I guess not everything can be the same in the dimensions, Naruto stated, but I just find it weird that you haven't met her. You do know Gaara, right? Of course, Ino replied, he's not much different, maybe just a bit scarier, but other than that the same. He's even Cage. Naruto hummed, weird. What does Gaara have to do with this? Ino asked. Oh, Naruto chuckled, the two of them are kind of inseparable. There are the select few who believed Gaara was going to end up with her, not Hinata. Ino raised an eyebrow. Okay, and as you can see, Naruto, Gaara interrupted, I chose Hinata. Honestly, Beneko and I. Together. Like Beneko says. Bleg. Everyone laughed at that, like it was some sort of inside joke. Ino didn't get it. True to his word, Kankuro did meet the company halfway to the land of iron. He was slightly taller than Ino remembered, and his lack of face paint was a bit of a slap in the face. But other than that, he reminded her a lot of the one she knew back home. However, it was still weird when he gave his brother a tight hug. Gaara just never seemed like a hug person, but he returned the hug full-heartedly. Kankuro also greeted Hinata warmly, with a kiss on each cheek. He shook hands with the others, but only gave Ino a curt hello. She said hello back. The company continued with their journey, now entering the colder climates. Everyone now had a cloak wrapped around them. They stopped to rest several hours after meeting with Kankuro. They had been traveling for at least 2 days, and had only had short breaks in between. The constant traveling was taking a toll on poor pregnant Hinata. She was the first to sit down when Sai announced they stop. Gaara sat down next to her, worry evident on his face. He handed her some water, which she took gratefully. It appeared as if Gaara wanted to say something, but he kept his mouth shut. Sai was scanning the perimeter, checking if everything was alright. Sasuke had made himself comfortable in a tree. Tamari and Kankuro were laughing about something and Naruto had started to gather wood for a fire. Ino decided to help him. When the fire was going, everyone sat down around it and enjoyed the time of silence. Sasuke was the only one who didn't move from his spot in the tree. Hinata pulled together a few things to eat. As Hinata handed Kankuro a cup of soup, Gaara decided to make conversation. How are affairs in Suna? Kankuro thanked Hinata for the soup, then locked eyes with his brother. Fine. Well, everything was fine when I was still running things. Beneko knows how to contact you if there is an emergency. Sasuke snorted from where he was perched in the tree, but did not say anything. Kankuro glared at him. Good, Gaara replied, putting an end to the clear dislike Sasuke and Kankuro shared. Kankuro sighed and turned his attention back to his brother. She's also asked me to relay the message, Kankuro began, that's she's planning a trip to Konoha after you return. That's fine, Gaara nodded. It will be nice to see her again, Hinata piped in, a smile on her face. Silence fell over the group again. They continued eating in silence, Sai constantly keeping a lookout for any movement in the distance. After 2 hours they decided to continue their journey. The land of iron was, very much like its namesake, barren and slightly boring. Ino had never imagined iron to be able to look beautiful, and the land of iron was not beautiful in winter either. It looks better in summer, Naruto explained. Ino took his word for it. They didn't travel far until they reached a large fortress, which Ino knew had to be the meeting place. They were not the only ones arriving. A middle-aged woman was coming from the opposite direction, her auburn hair was graying at an alarming rate, but her figure was still slim and healthy, dressed in a blue dress with high-heeled sandals. Despite her age, she was very attractive. Tucked under her arm was the famous cage hat, colored blue and with the kanji for water on it. May. Gaara greeted her first. Young Cage, May returned the greeting, still handsome, as always. Gaara did not budge at her obvious flirtatious attitude. May's attention turned to Naruto. Young Hokage, good to see you again. Likewise, Naruto grinned. May also had 2 guards, both young men Ino obviously didn't recognize. May didn't greet any of the others, for they were interrupted by the arrival of another. It was a company of 4, and all of them landed graciously on their feet in the snow. In the middle stood a rather skinny man with a long black beard and matching black hair and beady eyes. He didn't seem much older than Naruto or Gaara, but Ino couldn't be sure. He was dressed in a brown flak jacket, with matching brown cargo pants, sweater and sandals. On his head was the brown hat for the Tsuchikage. His 2 guards were also young, one a woman and the other a man. The woman who stood just to his right was clearly not a guard judging by her state of dress. Ino Umed she was the Tsuchikage's wife. Naruto, the Tsuchikage greeted them, I did receive your letter, just have not had the time to respond. Ah, good, Naruto replied, I did send it a bit on short notice, didn't I? Indeed, the Tsuchikage agreed. His gaze turned to Ino. Lovely to see you, Lady Ino. You too, Ino smiled. Still not married, May. The Tsuchikage turned his attention to the Mizukage. She narrowed her eyes at him dangerously, which made him laugh. I'm only pulling your leg. Yes, May grunted, you do have a habit of pointing out my love life to me, or lack thereof. Where's Aim? No idea, the Tsuchikage replied, she'll show up eventually. We all know what she's like, easily distracted. No, I am not. A high-pitched voice echoed loudly. Another group had arrived, led by the Raikage herself. Out of all the cage, she was the one that stood out the most. She was dark-skinned, short and plump, with blonde hair in a bun on top of her head. Her extreme voice did not suit her figure. At all. Aim, the Tsuchikage grinned, how lovely for you to join us. Didn't get distracted along the way again, did you? Excellent. Aim stomped over to the Tsuchikage, her weight causing the snow under her feet to jump up around her. Ino grasped Naruto's hand. He had warned about the Raikage's temper. As Aim continued to bite the Tsuchikage's head off, her voice sounding like a swarm of angry bees, the other cage headed inside to the warmth, where the current general of the samurai was waiting for them. 37-year-old Ino. Ino groaned and rubbed her temples. Her head was aching violently to the point where it felt like her brain was going to burst out of her skull. She had somehow managed to pull of a minor transfer using 5 dimensions to heaven in order to communicate with the other side, but she hadn't ended up in Ino's head. Although the technique had been a success, it left her feeling drained and as if her head was going to split open. And it didn't even last 5 minutes. Clearly it was much taxing and dangerous to use than she thought. At least she knew Naruto on the other side was aware of what was going on. He had remembered. The thought brought a smile to her face. After her first run-in with the technique's unique side effects, she had nearly died. It was not something she could easily forget. It had been a tough time in their lives, and Naruto had locked the memories of it all far away. He didn't want to remember his wife's near-death experience. He never spoke of it, and he never thought of it. Luckily, it had resurfaced when they needed it. If Naruto knew on the other side, and both sides were trying to find a solution, it could go so much faster. Who knew? Perhaps Ino would be back home soon. However, as that thought settled, her gaze lifted to Naruto, who was sitting opposite her. He was watching her curiously, obviously worried. She had asked him to stay with her while she attempted the technique. Well, he asked. It worked. Ino breathed, but I probably won't do it again. Okay. Naruto whispered. He seemed relieved. What did Ino say? Ino's lips tugged into a smile. Oh, it wasn't Ino. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Then who was it? Gar.